teaching you to make useful content so that you can build long-term relationships with the people that matter to your business. Hello and welcome to Useful Content. And today we have a brand new teacher in our Useful Content classroom, Ron Johnson. Hi, Ron.
Hi, how are you doing? I love the way that you said brand new because, of course, we're about to talk about branding. So quite clever on your part.
Hey, that's a good one. Good picking up on that. I not intentional because I always say it, but that's good. No one has ever picked up on that before. Very nice, very nice. So Ron, we know each other from LinkedIn, and you've been around my space on LinkedIn for a bit. And of course, you're from the Caribbean, from Barbados, one of my ancestral homes.
Yes.
But today we've come to talk about something that's very dear to your heart, about branding and HR combined together. But before we do that, let the people know what you do and how you help your clients make useful content.
Okay, sure. So my background, interestingly enough, my first degree was in biology. And a few months before I graduated, I realized I don't particularly like biology. So I took an MBA class. Came back to Barbados and worked in a branding adjacent industry, which was printing, with my dad. Then we moved into another branding adjacent space. We had a magazine called Circuit Magazine. That was actually it was the first magazine in the world to have Rihanna on cover. This is issue now blowing up for a bit back. We learned everything dealing with branding. And then we started our agency, Blueprint Creative. We started as a design agency, very specifically, meaning anything that can be designed. And then we kind of broadened to become a full branding agency and everything that goes along with it. And we help our clients. We always help our clients build stronger brands and stronger businesses. That's what we do day in and day out. Build stronger brands and stronger businesses.
Oh, excellent. I didn't know that you were into printing. Was it offset printing? I am an old printer myself.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. It was printed the big Heidelberg machines and stuff like that.
Heidelberg presses.
Yeah.
What do you have? You had a 4-color press? How many colors?
I can't remember offhand, but probably. It was like dad's business. I was there for a while, but it was an opportunity to actually see the paper go through. I used to get the plates and the inks, combined to make these 4-color things, and then you collate them and into whatever cutting, stapling, the gluing, and sometimes I can almost smell it sometimes.
You smell it. You know that smell, that ink and paper smell.
Yep.
Oh, you know the thing, man. I used to be a lithographer. And a press operator. When I first came out of technical school, that's what I did. I operated a printing press. Well, at least I was an assistant.
Right.
So that's some good history. That's some nice overlap there.
Yeah.
All right, great. So now that we've reminisced a bit about printing, let's talk about some of what we came to talk about. I think that you obviously described just now that you first started off in design, which I suspect is like identity, brand design, different things of that sort, graphic design.
Yeah, anything that could be designed. Anything that could be designed, we could do it.
Right, anything that could be designed, right? And you specifically said now you've gone into branding. Now, I want you, as somebody who has been doing this for a while, to give me your definition of branding.
Sure. So originally, people considered branding to be visual. And the name brand actually goes back thousands of years to when cattle owners or cattle ranchers or livestock rearers would actually heat a metal brand, and sear it onto the cattle. So to distinguish, I've owned this cattle, this is my brand. Could be an X, 2 X's, whatever, a circle. And that's how branding came about to be associated with a symbol. Nowadays, of course, language changes. And when we're talking about someone's brand, we're simply talking about how people think and feel about the organization's products and services, right? How they think and feel. So if someone has good sentiments towards your brand, you have a strong brand. If your reputation, you can think of a brand as a reputation. If your reputation is poor, you have a poor brand. There are people that have great visual brands, great looking website, great social media, great advertising campaigns, all this clever stuff. But then on the inside of the organization, it's a toxic work environment, and that helps to diminish the brand itself. So in the past, a brand was decidedly customer facing, right? But now when we're talking about brand, we have to take employees into consideration because your employees are part of your brand.
Yeah, yeah. So employees are part of your brand. Well, how does a company who is now aware of this? So we're saying that the brand is not external; it's internal. It's not the
Right.
visual identity, but it's something that is inside of the company. How does a
Right.
leader of a company, and this is just some general questions now, begin to
Yeah, of
build
course.
those branding things inside of a company? I know we get into details later about the synergy between HR and branding, but how does a leader start to build
Mm,
that culture?
right. So three things to remember. First thing, engagement. Second thing, engagement. Third thing,
Okay,
engagement.
okay, okay,
Right.
okay.
You have to engage people if you want to build a strong brand, right? And that engagement has to start on the inside of the organization as opposed to the outside. That's where a lot of people make their mistakes. We got to engage our customers. We got to make sure customers
Mm,
know, like, and
hmm,
trust
hmm.
us. And they're spending all this time engaging customers, and at the same time, the employees or team members, they feel like second class citizens in their own organizations, right? So engagement is basically a state of being where um, people feel mentally, emotionally, physically connected to the brand, and they feel as if this organization cares for me, and I'm going to do. I'll be the best version of my professional self. As soon as I step into that workplace, I will keep that best version of my professional self until I leave. And there's so many ways to engage people. I suspect you have a couple of questions coming up over that, so I don't want to jump the gun. But just remember that there's a quote from one of my favorite former, well, she's still HR consultant. And she says, brands are built from the inside.
Mm,
The way your employees behave, and I'm paraphrasing, the way your employees behave will eventually find its way to the outside.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It will eventually. If you have a bad culture, if you have great branding, your marketing team or ad agency is doing a great job of it, but inside your employees are disengaged, disillusioned, um, disgruntled. Eventually, that's gonna find its way to the
yeah,
outside,
yeah,
especially if you have customer facing staff.
yeah, yeah. So would you say that your brand is acutely tied or closely tied to your just overall customer experience?
They're all related. So branding, marketing, customer experience, they're all related. I'll show you how. There's a very easy saying, very memorable. Your customer experience will never exceed your employee experience. It will never. It will
Mm,
never. So if you want to improve your customer experience, by default, you have to improve your employee experience. you know, one of my friends I met on LinkedIn, Sybil, she has a great quote. She says, the way you kind of treat your employees is the way your employees will treat your
yeah,
customers, and if your employees don't feel engaged, neither will your employees. And I'm kind of paraphrasing her quote because I love it so much.
right, right. So it's important that your employees feel that they are being engaged because obviously the most important thing is engagement, 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 as you said earlier,
Yes.
so that they can
Yes.
now turn around and give the. So in other words, they cannot give the thing that they don't have. Basically, is what we say.
Exactly.
Okay, great. One.
Exactly.
Well,
So what, the last thing would say in terms of your reference to customer experience, poor customer experience is seldom the problem that needs to be
mm,
solved. Poor customer experience is the symptom of a bigger problem,
right.
which is usually employee engagement. So when you try to solve customer experience by giving all these rules, you must smile to the customer. If they come within 5 feet of you, you have to say hello. Those are rules to be followed, right? But it doesn't address the actual cause of that poor customer experience.
Right.
I mean, if you have a headache and you take a painkiller, it'll get rid of the pain, but it doesn't actually solve whatever caused that headache in the first place.
Yeah. I like the analogy. So it's passive relief. It's not active relief. It gives you
Yeah.
temporary relief essentially. Oh,
Yep.
all right, great. So we've established those things, and it's a good way to start in terms of framing how we should approach the synergy between branding and HR. Now, I know you believe in this very strongly. You yourself
Very.
built a personal brand around this as well. Why do you feel? Why do you feel that HR must have a seat at the branding table?
Okay. Very, very, very good question. And I will answer that by giving you a true life story as to how it all started. We were asked by an organization to develop a full branding campaign for them. They wanted to announce to the public, we're here, you're great, you're awesome, etc., etc. And our copywriters, account executives, graphic designers, everybody came together this great concept for this campaign, and it launched. And I think it grossed them like 175% to 200% of what their targets were, because they told us what their financial targets were, and they were ecstatic, and it was the worst thing that ever happened to them. Why? Because even though they met their targets, the customer experience was not great. And again,
Ooh.
poor customer experience is a symptom of poor employee engagement, right? So the next year when they came to us and wanted a similar campaign done, we did it. We went okay, but it certainly wasn't like off the charts. Like first one was we tried to peel back the layers of the onion and do these focus groups asking where you're not taking advantage of these super offers that people said, no, we remember what happened last year. And I don't really care how good the deals are. I'm not coming back that treatment again.
Yeah.
Right. And that made us realize, wait a minute, because of the way that things played out, our effectiveness as an external branding agency was heavily influenced by what was happening inside the company.
Mm-hmm.
So we realized that if we wanted to excel at the customer facing side, we needed to make sure that the inside brand, the culture, employee engagement were solid. And who's the department or team most likely to deal with things like internal comms, company culture, employee engagement, employee experience? HR. They are the most likely to be tasked with that. So anytime we're asked now to do something that's external, we always say we want HR to do it. We need to know before we start this project. We want to hear it straight from HR. What is your culture like? Are there any engagement problems we need to know about? What's your NPS score? All of these things have to come into play because branding is no longer only about the customer. It is also about the employee. It's about the team member.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Remember how your employees behave on the inside will eventually translate to the outside.
Yeah, I hear you. So that means that no amount of beautifully put together content can save you if you are not dealing with the internal thing.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's a really important point, because I think that many times when people come to, let's just suppose they come to my company for content strategy, or they come to create content, they are doing it on the basis of, we want this particular outcome. When we put out this content, let's just suppose we run a campaign, or we're doing this thing for 6 months, we want this particular outcome. But your company could be actively working against the outcome if you don't address the internal branding issues. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying that it's unreasonable and highly unreasonable to expect disengaged, disillusioned, disgruntled employees to provide the type of customer experience that will turn a casual shopper into a raving and a paying fan, right, of the brand. We once did a consult for a large company, and on the first day of the go see, our main point of contact was carrying us through the building. This floor is where this is, this floor is where this is, here's whatever room. And she passed this huge motivational poster. These, every company has these, some of them are very cliche, old school, but some of them are modern. And she stopped me quite dramatically, and she said, this poster is the cause of all of our problems. I looked at the poster and it looked visually appealing. I didn't know what she was talking about until I saw the words. The words said, the customer always comes first.
Oh.
And she said, of course, the poster itself is not the problem, it's what it stood for. But every said that all of our engagement issues stem from the fact that people, our team members, our employees feel that no matter what, they come second to the customer. And yes, that sounds logical because you need customer first, right? But if you put the customer first, it automatically means you're putting the employees uh, in second place.
Mhm.
By putting customers first, you're actually making the experience worse for
Yeah.
them
Yeah. Yeah.
compared to if you put the employees first and you have this team of really, really excited, really hyper engaged, really committed employees that will go the extra mile for that customer.
Mm.
By putting the customer first, you're denying them of that amazing, remarkable experience.
Mm. Mm.
It sounds
Mm.
paradoxical, but putting employees first actually makes the customer experience better.
I know the interesting thing about that is an age-old saying. That's not new. That is something that we've heard for ages. The customer should always come first. The customer is always right, and things of that nature. But you're saying in order to build a successful modern company brand, you have to address these internal things first, and
You have to. You
then it
have to.
flows out, it ripples out to benefit the customer.
Starting, I'll give you an example in terms of how we were bought into one another customer, and they wanted their visual brand upgraded. To use their own words, their visual brand was bad. Just said it was bad. We need to review it. So we spent about 45 minutes with them. We got on the job. And then I started asking the questions. Does the company have core values? Do the team members know the core values and do they live them? Are employees as productive when the supervisor is out of the room as when the supervisor is in the room? All of these questions about culture. And by the end, the CEO said, forget the visual rebranding for now. Our bigger issue clearly is employee engagement. So we went to work with them. We worked on their core values, explaining this is how we want to live at work. Here are the behaviors that we encourage. Here are the behaviors that we discourage, etc. And it was for a limited time engagement. When you work with clients, you want them to be able to graduate and stand on their own 2 feet. So about 6 months after our engagement with the client, I ran into one of their employees in the supermarket. He came up to me and said, introduced himself, said, where he's from, etc. So I said, how are things going at the company? In terms of the company culture, the core values, etc. He looked at me and I'll never forget this as long as I can remember things. He said, they're going good for the company, but they're going better for me. I was very confused. I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, I decided of my own accord to adopt the company's core values in my personal life. And I now feel as if I'm a better husband and a better father for him.
Oh.
I said, what?
Oh, okay.
Like, I was blown away, right? But that's what happens when you engage your employees and team members, right? If you do it right, there is a change in attitudes or a change in behaviors for the better. Core values are simply one of the tools that we use for better engagement. I thought I'd pull that out because it's such a powerful story of what can happen to an individual when they are engaged. There is a change, right? There's a change in mindset. There's a change in behavior. There's a change in expectations. There's a change. But that's one of the ways that we get help companies engage with their team members by bringing clarity to what's expected on the job and also giving them opportunities to enjoy the job. As we always tell our customers, we encourage our customers to encourage the F word in the workplace, and the F word being fun, not the other F word. But when you have when you have a company where people are excited to go to work and it's okay to have fun, yes, get your work done, but you can have fun. again, that builds up the engagement.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. As you were talking about the CEO earlier, I was thinking, yeah, well, the CEO really and truly should be the chief branding officer. Like the culture should flow from the top and go all the way down. Have you encountered a situation where there was resistance to that, such to the point that the brand could not shift?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a complex question, but yes, I've seen situations where there was resistance to change because to address the problem, you have to acknowledge there is a problem, and to acknowledge there is a problem, and be able to watch takes leadership, right? When you have a CEO that can confidently sit across the room from you and say, "We have a problem," it's much better than a CEO who has a problem and say it's not that bad, and then they get it. And it's not just the CEO, it might be the CFO, it may be the CHR, you know. But once you have sort of this the CYA principle, cover your, once you have people that are trying to cover
Yeah.
theirs, you're always gonna have a problem. You're always gonna have a problem, and it will stand in the way of your brand for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that's good stuff. And I think that's a good setting for trying now to find some other solutions for what this is. So we talked about why HR and branding should sit together and talk, and how the importance of that on company culture.
Right,
We got some examples about how that might work and how it might not work. So let's go a little deeper, right? And since you believe
right.
that brands are built from the inside out, you actually
Mhm.
define these branding professionals as superheroes in disguise. Could you tell me about that? Why do you feel that? What makes these HR professionals such great branding people, and why are they branding superheroes in your mind?
Are you familiar with this comic scene,
Yeah,
DC,
yeah, yeah,
Superman,
yeah.
Clark Kent? Okay, so you know that Clark Kent is Superman's alter
Mm-hmm.
ego, or vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. Um, that conversation about which is the alter ego and which is the real person will go on forever. But Clark Kent is this kind of unassuming, um, uh, mild-mannered reporter, and he doesn't get credit for everything that Superman does, even though they're one and the same. That's how I see HR professionals, right? I believe that the work that HR professionals do in terms of company culture, employee engagement, um, employee experience, all of that helps to build the brand. It helps to build a brand. But HR professionals are not always given the credit for building the brand from the inside, but they do the work. So Clark Kent doesn't get the the
Yeah, they
accolades
save the world accolades,
because
right?
he does to save
Yeah,
the world. Yeah, like that's what he's doing. It's just that no one's acknowledging. No one's put. Sorry, I shouldn't say no one. A lot of people haven't connected dots. Wait a minute, Clark Kent is Superman, and for me, it's like HR professionals are branding professionals. They contribute to the brand. They're one of the biggest defenders of the brand that you can have on your payroll.
mm,
Because if things go wrong on the inside, take a look, for instance, at some of the scandals that have happened over the years. There is a scandal that involved Uber where a disgruntled employee called, I think her name was Susan Fowler, um, left Uber and she did this essay on her time at Uber, which allegedly included discrimination, gender discrimination against women, female engineers, alleged unwanted sexual advances, and it tarnished the brand, right? It tarnished the brand. If HR were on point and had taken her, because she did go to HR, I had taken her complaint seriously and addressed the issue, those things probably would never have surfaced, right? So when I say that HR is defending the brand, it means they are doing the equivalent of what marketing is doing, right? So marketing is engaging customers, right? And you have a situation where HR has to engage employees, listen to their concerns, and take them
yeah,
seriously. And if you take other examples. I mean, Enron back in the day was one of the most highly valued companies, but they were allegedly, and using that word often just to not get myself in trouble, allegedly they were involved in a lot of fraudulent activity. The company folded, bankrupt. And the interesting thing is, if I'm not mistaken, integrity was one of Enron's core values.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, just about every corporate company has that as one of their core values. So,
But I bring that up specifically, right? Because I want people to understand, I want your audience to understand, it's more than just hanging them up on a wall
yeah,
or put them in a plaque or mentioning them in your annual report. You have to live it, right? You have to live this thing. And who better than HR to thrive on? So when I talk about branding, I developed a framework called the Bhranding Equation, but I spell it BHRANDING. It's phonetically identical to conventional branding, but it's a way to show that HR needs to be smack dab and center in the middle of branding. So that's why when you're talking about that, we say branding plus HR equals BHRANDING. It's simply a way to involve HR and to signal that HR needs to be involved in the branding process.
yeah. So you were talking just now about the situation where this employee at Uber, they had a situation that was untenable for them, and they left the job and they exposed all this stuff that was going on, right? And you said that if HR had listened to them, they might have been able to treat with this employee, and then they would not have been disgruntled. So that is one scenario. What about a scenario where the company is attempting to implement these values, engage with the employees, and the employees resist? Now, I could do this generally, but I want to be so specific about this. What happens if the people who are responsible for branding, the marketing people in particular, resist? What do we do then?
In a situation like that, you either have to change the people or change the people.
Changing people or changing people. A lot of the options you're giving are the same options.
So when I say change the people, I'm going to go back to
Oh,
that story with the employee
okay.
who had changed, had adopted, right? Who had adopted the core values, and he changed from the inside.
Right, right.
And I'm a firm believer that if you do this process well, you will change the people from the inside. Right. And that's the preferred option. That's the preferred option. I'm not going to go too deep into the other side because I always make it clear that I'm a branding professional that is embracing HR and that I'm not an HR professional myself. So I'm not going to give HR advice. But the second change to people means sometimes it's not a good fit.
Yeah.
Sometimes the employee is not a good fit for the company. Sometimes the company is not a good fit for the employee. It's not always the employee's fault. Sometimes the employee might be in the right and the company is in the wrong in terms of their approach and their core values and their ethics. You know what I mean? So when I say change the people or change people, that last change the people is a last resort, just to be clear. I know that there are going to be some HR people watching this and they're going to have some things to say. So I'm not giving the HR advice here. But in terms of answering your question, if the company has decided that it wants to reach a higher level of engagement and there's resistance, you have to find a way to change people's hearts and minds. That's the real first option, change their hearts and minds. And I have not heard of very many situations where the CEO or the CHRO or the CMO has come and said, we want to do better. We want to improve the employee experience. We want you to feel happier here. And they have an employee say, nah, you're not interested. Because if you start with employee engagement and employee experience, you start there first. 9 times out of 10, I would say you're going to have employees that will at least give management a chance and say, let me see what they have to offer. They may be critical, right? But they're going to say, we want to improve the employee experience. And then on top of that, if you give them the opportunity to say what you want your employee experience to look like, you're now putting it in their hands. they now have to demonstrate that we actually do want a better employee experience. So, for instance, at one point in time, um, this happened just before COVID in our own company. We put the employee experience in our team members' hands, and they decided what they wanted to do. Like we didn't force them to go to a party, like you have Christmas parties. We did have things like that. But one of the things that was really interesting is that all of our team members had an interest in health. When we said, what do you want your employee experience to look like? What do you want fun to look like? They said health. And I both of them got together. They would, jog around the building a couple
Right.
times. They did have some person come in and they do like different types of exercises. They chose that, right? Because we put the employee experience in their hands. We also had a group called Parts Liquid Blueprinters. We did my agency creative, and we had a group called Parts Liquid Blueprinter, and they decided what they wanted the employee experience to look like in terms of fun. Not me, even though I was the CEO. So when you go to an organization and say we want to improve the employee engagement, you want to improve the customer experience, and you give employees an opportunity to be a part of that change, and they have a certain amount of a realistic amount of decision making power. If it fails, it means that they themselves have failed because and they don't want to fail; they want to succeed.
Yeah.
You see, once you have a situation where the company's interests are aligned with employees' interests or your team members' interests, when they're one and the same, by acting in by the employee acting in his or her own interest, they're automatically acting in the interest of the company, and that's what I mean in terms of change to people from the inside, mentally, emotionally.
Yeah.
When that change happens, it's a powerful thing to watch.
Yeah.
When employees step up and say, "I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that." In our agency, one of our core values was, learn something new every single day. And we have a library of books, about 300 books that the employees themselves, many of them chose because they wanted to improve in graphic design. They wanted to improve in customer service. They wanted to improve in a bunch of different things. They had the opportunity, and giving them and trusting them that much helped to keep them
Yeah.
engaged, keep them engaged, keep them engaged.
Hmm. Yeah.
It was a long-winded answer, but did it answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It did. It did. It did. I mean, I have to admit, at the beginning when you said change the employee or change the employee, I didn't get that it was two different changes. So,
Right.
what is good? You clarified, and I know I understand exactly what you mean. Internal change, mentality change, outlook change, as opposed to
Yes.
replace.
Yeah.
You know, re-
That's the last option if all else
that's it.
fails. And like you said, I will defer to HR professionals on when it's time for that. That's
Right.
my focus is on the branding aspect of it.
Right. Excellent. So now that we have established all of this understanding of how branding works, that's branding plus HR and what the employee should do, what leadership should do. Let's talk just a little bit about how that impacts the actual content coming out of the business and how when employee alignment happens, how that then is manifest inside of the other parts of the marketing and branding. So, what results have you seen happen when those things align internally?
Right. So when things align internally, I'm going to go back to what I personally believe is one of the biggest responsibilities for modern HR professionals. Modern. There's still some HR professionals whose CEOs don't let them. They stick them in the corner to be administrative tasks, right? That's what we call transactional HR. Um, their CEOs don't give them an opportunity to fully blossom. But then you have transformational HR. These are the ones who are involved in things like employee engagement, company culture, etc. Right. So when things are aligned, one of the biggest things that I think modern HR responsibilities includes is employee engagement. Right. And once you have employee engagement locked off, you have so many positive offshoots. Right. So, for instance, there is research that's being conducted that found that when employees are engaged, I don't remember the exact statistics, but productivity rises, right? Companies that have employee engagement, they generally are more profitable, right? Companies that have high employee engagement, have a good employer brand, tend to have less turnover and churn, right? Therefore, saving the company tons and tons of money. So once that core is taken care of, all the other offshoots, they fit into place like a jigsaw puzzle almost organically or almost automatically, right? All the things that the CFO is saying, hey, we need to cut costs and we need to improve revenues. Those things start to happen almost organically. Yes, there needs to be some guidance, but those happen almost organically. And once you have that employee engagement, then the best and the brightest will want to come to you,
Yeah.
right? Therefore, reinforcing a culture of excellence. Just yesterday, I was encountering a true story that happened 7 years ago. So whenever we employ or we both employ some person, we're doing the recruitment, we're doing reviews, etc. We always ask a silly question just to get people a little bit, relaxed. So we'd ask them, Skittles or M&Ms? And they'd be like, what? This is where you're asking me if they prefer Skittles or M&Ms. Or we'd ask them, do you prefer Friends or Seinfeld? We had to stop using that as our candidates became a little bit younger because they're like
Yeah,
Friends.
what's
No,
that?
that it's like that, yeah. But we would ask them Skittles or M&Ms, and they'd kind of become more engaged to say, that's okay, if you prefer Skittles, what color would you be? And then they get animated and they start talking, your true personality comes out, right? And this happened 7 years ago. I went to purchase an item and the salesperson, friendly guy, did exactly what he's supposed to do, engage the customer, show interest. And he said, what do you do? What industry are you in? I said, branding, marketing. I usually say marketing advertising because some people don't fully understand what branding is. And he said, okay, that's cool. Where do you work? I said, event creative. And the salesperson said, event creative. That's the company that asks Skittles or M&Ms during interviews. I was like, what? Like, how do you know that? He said, because anybody that wants to get into branding on the agency side knows about you guys. They know your culture, they know what the interview process, they know about so many different things. So many different things. I was like, oh, so that's where all those unsolicited applications for employment came from because of the employer brand.
Yeah.
We just didn't know that it had left. Clearly, everyone we interviewed had gone out and said, yo, that company that's interviewed with is really different, very different. You know what I mean? They asked me, Skittles or M&Ms. What's that about? So, like I said, for the once the employee engagement is set, things start falling.
Right. It's interesting. When you were talking just now, I had the sense that when you do the thing right, it seems like the word gets out for itself, and you may have less need for certain types of content, or maybe advertising, or maybe these external things that could come along with marketing. Would you think that might be a true thing, that you have less need to communicate in other ways once the internal things are taken care of?
I think I wouldn't want to talk about quantifying it to say less content or more. I would focus on the quality
Yeah.
of the content. The quality of the content is definitely going to go up. Definitely. From stories, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Zappos.com.
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
They were
definitely.
good. They were purchased by Amazon for a company good. And they're just known because of their company culture. They're known for their customer experience. Remember, there's a link. Your customer experience will never exceed your employee experience. And they had a situation where a customer called about shoes or whatever they're buying and just felt like talking. And the operator did not want to interrupt her because of whatever she was talking about. And that customer phone call lasted hours. If it wasn't 8 hours, it was 10 hours. Longest phone call from the call center in history. Instead of the management chastising this telephone operator for being there so long, it became a badge of honor right? That some person wanted to speak to a telecom operator that long, and they actually put it into an ad, I believe, and they spread it. There are stories to be told, right? Better stories to be told once you have that alignment that you're talking about. So I don't want to say that you need to communicate less. I would definitely have to say that. What I would say in terms of content is that level of content that you're going to have available to you through storytelling will just organically just organically grow. And sometimes those storytelling techniques um, happen organically without a operator, right? Or as well, because people are talking about it. We used to make a big deal, or we still make a big deal about employees and team members' birthdays, and we tried to make them personal. And we had one of our executives who loved a particular ride driver in Barbados, loved their style, loved their car, everything. And for her birthday, we arranged to get her to meet this rally driver and sit in the actual rally car, right? And she cried. She cried tears because she was so excited, right? And guess what? She told people. She told people. You didn't have to sit down and write a blog article about it. You didn't need to because she told people. And all the other things all the crazy ideas and the crazy games we play, we have the parties for our team members, all this stuff, and customers. The customers themselves start talking, right? So what happens is that your content channels diversify, right? So before you might have said, I have a blog and that's the main content, or I'm going to do a vlog, that's the main content, right? Or the main channel. What happens now when things align is that your content channels explode. They explode, and they're no longer just restricted to, hey guys, we're gonna publish one blog a month, right? So your storytelling becomes richer, much richer, because people are telling stories. So in addition to that one blog a month that you may have decided on, or we're gonna post on Instagram 5 times, right? Or whatever structured content you have. I'm not saying to cut that out, continue it for sure, but you're going to see your distribution channels explode.
Yeah.
Fully explode.
Yeah.
People are going to talk about it. People are going to talk about it. People are going to talk about it. And it all goes back to engagement.
Yeah. I hear you. Engagement produces engagement. That's what I would put it as. Yeah. I can see like employee-driven content marketing, even, or even so it's driven by the employees' dedication, loyalty, advocacy, for this particular brand because of how they feel, how they fit internally, and then that is what would happen, and it spills out into your distribution channels, and the employees' distribution channels become your distribution channels because they're talking about the brand essentially. Yeah.
Exactly. So what I would say, I know we're running short on time, is that in terms of the content channels, and content is both an art and a science, right? There are people who are naturally gifted at writing content, and then there's the science behind it, in terms of psychology. But I've seen companies, the data has shown that LinkedIn did a study recently, and the number one challenge for new employees who are planning to apply for a job, the number one challenge they had was not knowing what the company was really like, right? And it also showed that applicants trusted employees 3 times more than they trusted what the company said about its culture, right? So writing about our culture, awesome. Employees talking about our culture, awesome word, if that's a word. I'm sure it's not a word. But what some companies do is that they actually put their employees in front of the camera and say, hey, we're not censoring you. Tell us what it's like to work in this organization. Tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly. And they put it out on social media. And people who plan to apply are like, well, okay, that's what it's really like. Yes, there's free snack cupboards, but the work is really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes it goes over time or whatever the case is. So, you know, I just think that the storytelling is really enriched as opposed to having to either increase or decrease quantity. I would say the quality of the storytelling.
Yeah, I agree with that so much. And I think that's a great way for us to end off our conversation here today, Ron. People may have heard you talk about this fusion between branding and HR, and they may want to learn more from you. Where can the people find you online,
Sure.
Ron?
I am mostly on Instagram. If you type Ron Johnson Barbados, you're gonna find me. My handle is Ron Johnson Sibo, RonJohnsonSonco. Feel free, you know, if you have questions about how and why branding and HR should be working together in your organization, you know, just connect with me on LinkedIn. We have a conversation. You know, really interesting to hear other people's challenges that they're going through, and how bringing HR into branding, BHRANDING, how that can actually turn you into a more profitable.
Yeah. Ron Johnson, you should put a middle initial in there to separate yourself, because like Googling you is the hardest thing ever.
Oh, really? Once you put on the Barbados, you should find me. I cool. I'll go check straight after.
Maybe that might be the key to it there. And the last thing is that you do have a book. Your book was released in 2021, I believe. Is it like late 2021? It's Tighten Your Shoelaces. Bright yellow cover with some black and turquoise text.
Yes.
And you can check that out. They can get it on Amazon. Yeah.
You can get it on Amazon. And I'll close with this by explaining Tighten Your Shoelaces, what it's called that. It's a fable I heard many years ago. There were these two guys walking through the forest, and all of a sudden this huge angry bear decided to attack them. The first guy bent down really, really quickly to tighten his shoelaces because he was going to make a run for it. The second guy looked at him and said, "What the hell are you doing? You can't possibly outrun the bear." The guy took off on a sprint. He looked over his shoulder and he said, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." Right? Meaning that the bears are going to take care of him, right? So the book is really about keeping one step ahead of your customers using the principles of branding.
Yeah. Good explanation, great analogy, great story. Thank you so much, Ron, for joining us on the Useful Content Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I hope I brought some value to you and your listeners.
I'm absolutely sure you did. And thank you so much, students, for joining us in the conversation. Useful Content Classroom dismissed. And we're clear. Yes, so that's good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Yeah. I hope it was worth your time. I always want to add value to anything I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. I knew we were gonna get into the conversation. The time flew fast. I probably would have more things to ask and to go deeper and so on. But maybe another time we'll be able to catch up and get those things done. You know, you have a really interesting background. That whole print thing threw me for a loop. I don't usually meet people who have been in printing. You know, that's not usual. But I guess in your case it makes sense because you then have now this branding agency and then now a branding BHRANDING agency now. Very interesting. The Useful Content Podcast is brought to you and produced by Relate Studios. You can see the work we do at our website, relatestudios.com. If you like what you've heard on the podcast today, please follow, leave a rating, and come back next week for another great episode. And if you want to get more useful content in between that, you can follow me, Juma Bannister, on LinkedIn. See you soon in the Useful Content Classroom. But until then, don't forget to make useful content.